Well, hello and welcome to the RTÉ Soccer Podcast. I am Raf Diallo. Later on, I'm going to be joined by Rachel Graham of Shelbourne. I was speaking to her yesterday, just off the back of the second round of games in the Women's Premier Division. But right now, obviously, there's one show in town this week. I don't think I really need to spell it out, but there is a match on telly, a playoff match on Thursday evening. RT2 and the RT Player kick off at 7:45. The programme starts at 7 o'clock, and we'll also have live radio commentary. Probably don't need, as I said, we don't need to spell it out, but it is Ireland against Czechia World Cup playoff semi-final, and we'll also have a live blog on rte.ie/sport, and we're going to preview that now. And I'm joined by the delectable Alan Cawley. How are you?
Delectable, that's a new one on me, Raf. I like it. Yeah, I've been called many things in my life, but delectable is a new one.
Yeah,
I like it.
Yeah, I know the thesaurus needed a little bit of work, but like just in terms of the build up to this as well, I can't remember the last time there's been as much of a buzz about an Ireland game, over the last decade, which obviously has been quite dark in many ways.
Yeah, and I think that's the reason for it, Raf. There's been no kind of hype around anything because we haven't been close or in contention as such to get to a World Cup, if you like. So it has been kind of doom and gloom over the past 10 years, if you like. So to have a situation where we're going into a game at the start of this week, Thursday night, obviously with the potential to get ourselves into another playoff final, if you like, next week, with the chances, the carrot that's dangling at the end of it to get ourselves qualified for World Cup. It's incredible, really. And I suppose it's also brought a new interest from a lot of young kids who haven't really, like, we've been fortunate enough to see us in major tournaments, and I've always felt over the last kind of number of years when it has been doom and gloom and it's been looking very bleak, that I've always felt for kind of the next generation coming along that I'd love them to kind of experience what we went through as kids, and it seemed kind of really far away for them, to be honest with you, over the last number of years because of, I suppose, the decline and the transition and the lack of development of players, and seeing where we are kind of in the food chain in terms of international football. It did feel kind of really far away from us, but here we are, only kind of 3-4 days out from the big game on Thursday night, and then a week away from potentially qualifying. It all of us feels in touch and distance again, Raf, which makes it so exciting for everybody. Yeah,
and I suppose also the fans getting in on the act, because Euro 2020, we were actually in that playoff, of course, in Slovakia, but I think we have to remember as well that was the period of COVID, so there was this element of supporters not being able to be involved, a lot of uncertainty around it. This time completely different, and regardless of whether you're in Ireland, whether you're among the 6,000 who are going to Prague, whether you've got a ticket or not, and even people sort of in our diaspora who live abroad. And I was just looking at the Boys in Green thread on Reddit. I don't know if you peruse it, but over the last few weeks it's been a case of a lot of people, wherever they live, whether they live in Barcelona or they live in whatever city in the world, what's the pub or the best place to be in that particular place. And it got to a point where somebody there yesterday I spotted on it was jokingly, obviously, where to watch the match on Enceladus, the sixth moon of Saturn. So we got to that point where the number of queries for it have got to a certain point, but it is brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely, Raf. Of course it is. It's brilliant. And that's, I suppose, the one thing that we do bring in terms of the excitement is the colour that we bring to any of the major tournaments. And that's why people are desperate for it almost. And you only have to look back to the scenes after the Hungary game and the brilliant videos that were circulating all around the country in different places. And what it means to the country. You mentioned the start of the show that it's the only show in town. It is the only show in town when the soccer team qualifies for a major tournament. Nothing touches it. Nothing even comes close to it. And that's not being disrespectful towards the rugby or the other sports that we all follow, which in their own right are brilliant and bring plenty of excitement to people as well. But just in terms of the soccer as well, because it's so global, as you said there, in terms of the fans and being all over the world tuning in, and I'm not sure we were getting the 6,000 figure out of, but I think there'll be probably double that in Prague. Now, not many in the stadium. I think it's only 900 tickets, is it? Something like that we're going to get. But the amount of people I've spoken to who are actually heading over as well, and it'll be in and around the area and around the stadium and in pubs and in bars watching it as well. So I think it's going to be an incredible occasion. And now that here we are kind of only 3 days out for it, I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, now just a reminder again, RT2 and the RT Player on Thursday, also live radio commentary on especially extended Inside Sport on RT Radio 1, and as I said, a live blog as well. Now, it was probably a nice time for the FAI then to drop in the contract news for Hamer Hallgrimsson in the build-up. It was during the press conference last Thursday that they revealed it. Your thoughts on that in terms of the timing as well?
Yeah, it was, because we were all tuned in to see the squad, and obviously the talk around maybe would there be potential newbies in the squad, and the fact that we have a couple of suspensions as well, and who would come in for those players. So it was more kind of the excitement around who was going to be in the squad that everybody was tuning in, of course. But then he just drops the line towards the end, and he was quite calm about it as well, Heimer, to say that he had signed a new contract. So I'm kind of a bit mixed on it, I have to say, Raf. I think he's done a very good job. When you think back to the start of the campaign, there was a lot of hope and expectation around this group. Didn't get off to the best of starts, and we almost felt we were out of it again before we'd even been in it. But the way they've turned it around in the last 3 games has been absolutely incredible, because you go back to, I suppose, the game against Armenia, where we didn't play great. We got the win eventually, but everybody felt with the 2 games that we still had coming up, the Portugal game and obviously Hungary, that it was still kind of out of our reach. So the fact that we were able to get the 6 points out of those last 2 games, and again, we all seen the scenes, it was incredible. So he deserves a lot of credit for that. I also kind of like his demeanour and how he's carried himself throughout as well. I think he's brought a calmness to the whole place as well, which has been good. A little bit of security amongst the players. The players seem to like him, which is important. But the most important thing, regardless of all that, Raf, like, it's not just about being a nice guy, is that there's substance to what you're doing. And the fact that he's got us into this position, we would have taken this at the start of the campaign, especially with the group that we were in, obviously, going up against Portugal and Hungary. So I think he deserves a lot of credit for that and a lot of kudos for that. Did that warrant a new contract? I probably would have held off until after these games, to be honest with you. But the fact that it's there, I don't have a great issue with it, to be honest with you. It gives stability in terms of the next campaign, that we all know that he's going to be in charge and going forward. And I'm okay with that, I have to say. I think he's done good, considering what he came into as well. Very difficult. We spoke earlier about the doom and gloom around the place, the transitional period. Stephen obviously deserves a bit of credit for bringing a lot of them through. A lot of them were obvious ones anyway, but we did have to go through that period. So it's not like he walked into a multi-talented group of players, let's be honest about it. Good professionals, good lads who are carving out careers for themselves. I don't want to be disrespectful towards the group, but it wasn't like he was walking into a squad with like 3-4 world-class players. So it was a big job, I suppose, on his hands, and I think he's delivered well enough on that, to be fair, Raf. So I'm okay with it, I have to say.
Yeah, that last decade since Euro 2016, I think a lot of the debate was, the words "we don't have the players" was one we would often hear. But I remember Stephen Kelly this time last year, ahead of the Bulgaria games, the two playoff games in the Nations League, he felt that there is something within this squad, that they're capable of getting to a major tournament. Obviously, they're now possibly on the cusp of one. What did November tell you about what their capabilities are?
Yeah, well, I think in fairness to them, the resilience they showed in those 2 games, and the belief, what they got out of the Portugal game, I think it helped that we were at home. It was a huge occasion. And even if you go back to that line that we always used to throw out, that we don't have the players, I think that was based around, if you actually separate the two, maybe we don't have the players to play the kind of football that maybe Stephen was trying to implement. And I think sometimes that kind of conversation got diluted by the fact that people were focusing on the style of football over how good these players actually were. Mm-hmm. I think we have a good enough group of players to play a certain way, and I think that's what Heimer has brought in, a realism into maybe us being a bit more direct, not playing kind of the brand of football that maybe you see one of the top countries play. So I think that's where the divide is, in terms of, do we have the players, or do we have the players to play the style of football that one of the top countries play? I think we have a good enough group of players to play in a certain way that would get us qualified for a tournament. And if that means by being a bit more direct, a bit more on the front foot, a bit more kind of combative in how we go about our way, which we've always done for years and years, Raf, with a little sprinkle of football kind of filtered in, which is what we've seen under Hallgrimsson, that's good. I'm fine with that. That's kind of a realistic way of playing football, and I think that's what he's brought to the table here. And if you go back to that night against Portugal in the Aviva, unbelievable atmosphere, like maybe what we would have seen with a Germany victory there years ago. Ball up the front, get it quickly up to it was Shane Long that night, but get it quickly up to Troy Parrott. We had players in support of that, and a moment of magic from Troy gets us a goal. That's fine. That's good play in my view, Raf. I have no issue with that whatsoever. So I think coming off the back of that with Portugal, when we get the victory, that gives us huge confidence going into the game away to Hungary. But I think he brought a calmness in going into that, realising the job at hand as well. But to get the victory in the manner that we did, I think it was phenomenal. And that's why I think going into this, even though it's been a few months ago, I still think we should have plenty of confidence going into this fixture Thursday night. Yeah,
and a squad of 25 was picked last week, of course. Liam Scales is in but suspended for this game, so it's with the eye to the potential final/friendly, and we'll find out obviously after Thursday what that's going to be, which would be Aviva Stadium next Tuesday. But obviously Evan Ferguson, Mikey Johnston, Josh Cullen not part of the picture, and as Heimir Hallgrímsson said in his press conference last week, they're all likely. Well, Cullen we know is not going to the World Cup. If we qualify, the other two look very unlikely also, so obviously commiserations for them. But also Bazunu, Smallbone, Festia Basele also miss out on the squad, and quite a few, well, there's only really one very new face who we'll talk about very shortly in Harvey Vale, but there were a couple of little surprises. James Abankwah being in for one was one of those.
Yeah, that was a surprise for me, but again, you look at James in terms of, I suppose, the experience he's built up even at such a young age as well. Mainstay in that under 21 team for the past couple of seasons. So yeah, maybe a little bit of a surprise, and probably just as cover really in terms of those defensive areas. Could he have got another midfielder in instead of maybe taking out, because I think we're well covered in those areas anyway defensively, so could he have brought in kind of an extra midfielder, an extra attacking player? Possibly, but I've no issue with that. I think it was on kind of predictable lines, to be fair, the squad, with what he had to pick from, I suppose. So there's no real, like normally after these things, the odd time a debate can break out as to why a certain player wasn't in the squad, if you like. I think it's kind of gone along the lines that we all predicted. We were discussing potentially there was a couple of League of Ireland lads maybe, but other than that there's no real debate to break out. I think the squad that he has picked, to be fair, I'm quite happy with that as well, what he has at his disposal. Obviously, the couple of injuries, we would have loved them, particularly Josh Cullen, who would have been a starter on the night, and I think he'll be a big loss, and Evan as well, of course. So they're the two big ones that people can focus on. But I think he has to deal with what he has, and that's one thing that he's always done. I think, in fairness to him as well, he doesn't make excuses. He doesn't kind of point to the fact that if we lose a match or if we've drawn a match or whatever, we didn't have this player, we didn't have that player. He works with what he has at his disposal, which is the right thing as a manager, and I'm happy enough with that as well in terms of the team as well and what I think it will be, Raf. I'm quite happy with what's going to go out on that pitch on Thursday night and give us a good chance of qualification.
In Harvey Vale of QPR, that was sort of a surprise, but not, because QPR, of course, accidentally released a video the night before.
They broke the surprise.
They broke the surprise, so there was no real sense of suspense. He's been in really good form actually the last couple of weeks, but Heimir Hallgrímsson discussed him at the press conference last week, so let's just have a listen to that when he spoke to Tony O'Donoghue just before the presser.
Another one that I probably talked to him over a year ago when he was injured at Queen Park, so they bought him injured from Chelsea and saw him as a future player, a big player for them, and he expressed the interest of playing for us, so we had a good talk. Yeah, I would say probably 14, 15 months ago, and I've been watching him coming in, starting to play and progressing at Queen Park, and this is a good moment to bring him in.
It's a big moment to bring him in.
Yeah. He would kind of be the exception to the rule that we needed. We wanted to have the experience and the know-how what we are doing. He would be the exception to the rule, like Tool last camp, a new phase in, never been with us before. It's okay to have one or two, but you can't bring in a lot of players and you cannot be testing a lot of players. But he has the quality. I would say football. As a footballer, probably similar to Finn, is that he's a football brain. He knows his positioning, is clever, creating chances, scoring goals. So he's just all around good football player, good engine as well. And you can see him growing and growing. And
can you see him playing a part next Thursday?
Absolutely, that we wouldn't have picked him otherwise unless we see him. But obviously he's new in camp, and we need to see how he is reacting with the players, etc. It's not much training time we have, but we can sit with him and talk to him and get to know him personally. And it's a good time to do a little bit of experiment, but not much in vital games like these.
Right, so that is Heimir Hallgrímsson there speaking to Tony O'Donoghue about Harvey Vale. So he is the new kid on the block, so to speak, and obviously we won't know him too well. He's come through the Chelsea academy. He's obviously at QPR now. He did have loans at the likes of Bristol Rovers, sorry, I should say, a couple of seasons ago, where he even sort of lined out a left back, but his usual position is either out wide, where he's doing most of his work at the moment, or also as a number 10. And the fact that Heimir's spoken about him sort of as a Finazaz type. Do you look at that as actually just like a positive because maybe we might be light in that specific type of player?
Yeah, absolutely. The more creative players we can get into the team, the better, Raf, because if you look around the team in terms of the likes of Knight, Cullen, Malumbi, they're workmanlike, if you like. Finazaz is the only one kind of that brings that bit of stardust as that creative one. Ogbene has an eye for a goal, but again, he's very direct in what he does rather than actually technically very good. So the likes of Harvey Vale coming into the team, I think it brings a freshness that it's probably needed as well in terms of kind of those creative players that we don't have. So the fact that he's in good form also, like Tony asked him the question there, can you see him playing? Absolutely. That's why they're in the squad. That's why they're there. He comes in good form. QPR had a good win at the weekend. He scored and he set up, I think, 2 or 3 of the goals as well. So he's in good form. He's playing regular. He has come through the Chelsea product line, as you say, in terms of the academy. So well coached. Very, very technically gifted young player. So he definitely won't start the game, but just in terms of, I suppose, not just these next 2 games, just in terms of going forward as well, Raf, I think he'll be a good addition to the squad because when you look at those forward players, especially if Evan is struggling, it's going to be a while before he gets back. You're very reliant on the likes of Parrott for the goals, obviously, and Finazaz is the creative one. So if we can get another 1 or 2 in, the likes of Harvey Vale, I've no issues with that whatsoever.
Yeah, you mentioned Ogbene there, so his game time has been kind of limited, although he did play at the weekend. Ida didn't get on, Boston Lowell didn't get on either for their clubs. Same story with Robbie Brady actually, and Seamus Coleman of course lacking game time. So there's a clutch of players in that squad who have had injuries and then haven't, bar Ogbene who I mentioned, haven't really got back in. Is that a bit of a worry for you?
Normally, people always speak to, I suppose, minutes and game time, and you need to get a rhythm into your play and stuff like that. And obviously, of course, there's no kind of replacement for regular game time, if you like. Training ground, training minutes just doesn't do it, just doesn't replicate it whatsoever. But in a one-off situation like this, I wouldn't be concerned, I have to be honest with you, Raf. And especially with the modern player as well, they're so kind of manicured and looked after, so professional as well, to be fair to them. So the likes of Seamus, the likes of Ogbene, these lads, like fit lads, kind of always on their toes. And in fairness to the likes of Seamus and the likes of Ogbene and even Robbie Brady and all, they would have had an eye on this playoff. So even though they're trying to get themselves back and fit and get as much minutes as they can for their club with a view to being involved in the squad or this game, they would have been purely looking at the fact that I need to be ready for this game, and that would have been the target they would have set themselves. So they would have been primed and ready, looking after themselves, I suppose, at their own training ground. Conversations with the physio. I'm sure maybe Hallgrimsson has conversations with them around the fact that he knows maybe that they're not getting his regular game time, but he would have had them told already, I would say 1 or 2, that look, there's a fair chance the likes of Seamus, the likes of Ogbene, you're going to start in this game, so be ready, look after yourself and all that kind of stuff. So it would be a concern kind of if we were going into a World Cup, if you like, and there was 3-4 games upcoming and they hadn't played. But in a one-off situation, I wouldn't be concerned, again, as I said, because they're such good lads, they're so professional, and the modern player, to be fair, they're all well looked after.
Yeah, and I was speaking to a Czech journalist just to get a sense of the, I suppose, the strengths of the opposition, where their weaknesses are. So that was on Friday, and that's on the RTÉ Sport YouTube channel and also on our different podcast feeds as well. And I suppose the takeaway from that chat is the Czechs are going to be very physical. They don't have a whole pile of guile in central midfield either. So that's the sort of battle lines that Ireland will have to prepare for. So how would you be setting up? The Czechs are probably going to move to a back 3 because the new manager that they have in charge, Miroslav Kubek, that's his favourite formation. So would you be mirroring it from an Ireland point of view, going back 3 as well?
I don't think even it's a case of us mirroring what he will do. I think that's what we will play anyways, the back 3, because with the personnel that we have there as well, in terms of Jake O'Brien, Nathan Collins, Darragh O'Shea, they'll be the 3 that I would see starting. And even just reading up on, as you say, Kubek, he's a wily old fox, so he plays with that back 3, whether that be a 3-4-3, 3-5-2, we can kind of be flexible in that. But certainly from what I've been reading as well, and exactly as you say, in terms of the creative guile that they don't have, it'll be very, very direct. They've Patrick Schick up front, obviously, who's a big physical kind of
scored a couple of goals at the weekend as well.
Imposing figure, playing very well in the Bundesliga with Bayer Leverkusen, scored plenty of goals for the national team as well. So I think they'll be very direct in how they operate and getting balls up to him. They can go with another lad plays for Slavia Prague, Chari, who plays alongside him, or else they can go with Pavel Sulk. I think he scored 10 goals in 21 games for Lyon. He can either play alongside Schick as well, or else he can play actually in behind both Schick and Chori, so they'll be very direct. You mentioned in terms of the two centre midfield players that they have as well, Souček, who we see on a regular basis with West Ham. We all know Souček's strength, workmanlike, very physical, gets up and down the pitch, technically not the best, but has an eye for a goal, and they will bypass the midfield, so that means they will be obviously playing up the Schick, up the Chori, Pavel Sulk being the one kind of get in around them, but also Souček will be making late runs into the midfield like what we see at West Ham, and as I say, he has a real eye for a goal. So in terms of the job that I would see Knight and Malumbi doing, that'll be a real battleground, as you say, whether it's Pravod and Souček, which I think will play Pravod as a midfielder with Slavia Prague as well, will probably play in alongside Souček. Then you have Knight and Malumbi, those two facing up against them. But there won't be an awful lot of football played in there. So even with those four that we named, the two from our side and the two from their side, there's no real ball-playing midfielder, if you like, in amongst that. So I can see us bypassing our midfield as well, to be honest with you, Raf. And also you'll see the same with Czechia. It'll be a very, very physical game. The one player that I would kind of pick out from Czechia that we definitely need to watch is David Jurasek, the left wing-back. Loves to get forward, loves to put balls into the box as well. Has experience playing the Bundesliga, but is now playing his football at Slavia Prague, and puts real devastating crosses into the box for the likes of Schick, who he feeds off. So it'll be a tough game. It'll be a battle. I can see us with going with the back three. I think it'll be similar to what we'd seen in Hungary in terms of the back three. The only two, Scales is obviously missing, so I think Manning will be a like-for-like replacement that'll come in there. And the fact that Josh Cullen is missing Knight, I think will play in there alongside Malumbi. You'll see Coleman right wing-back. That's who I would play. Again, to look after Jurasek. Whether we see Seamus bombing forward or not too much depends on obviously the fitness side of things, but also his experience, and he'll be clever in how he gets forward and how he kind of uses his body, if you like, going forward. Ogbene, I think, will play up alongside Azaz as the kind of two in behind Parrott, and they'll be the attacking three that will cause problems for them. So, but it'll be a tough physical battle, I think, for both sets of players.
Yeah, so I was going to ask you to name your team, so you've done that there.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we will skip past that. But the hostile atmosphere is something it's not a big stadium, the Fortuna Arena that Slavia have, 20,000 seat or give or take, or just close to at 19,000 and so. But it's going to be that's the one issue that Ireland will have to deal with as well. It's going to be a very, obviously they've been through Budapest, so that will probably give them a taste for it.
Yeah, the Budapest is obviously bigger and more kind of expanded, if you like to say. I think 65,000, incredible. This Puskas Arena. This is proper condensed in terms of 20,000. There was a brilliant article in the Irish Times I read, I think it was yesterday, from a coach who's over there working with Slavia Prague. He's with Sparta Prague, sorry, but he spoke about the derby game a couple of weeks ago with Slavia and Sparta. Jeremy O'Carroll is his name, and he spoke about just how hostile that arena can be because it's right in on top of you. Now that can make for a brilliant atmosphere as well, Raf, and again, the modern player will be well used to that, but also kind of backs to the wall type scenario. That's something that we feed off as well in terms of being an underdog as well. So I don't think that'll hold any fears for us, but it will be hostile. You only have to go back to, I suppose, Czechia's group games as well. They're very strong at home. People point to the fact that they lost to the Faroes away, they lost to Croatia away, but the 4 games they played at home, they won 3 and they drew with Croatia at home as well. So they're very, very strong at home. In the games that they played out of the 8 group games, they scored 18. Now 10 of them was against Gibraltar, 6 and 4. So I wouldn't point too much to that in terms of them being a free scoring team, if you like. But certainly at home, they're very, very strong. I think that stat is quite telling. In the 4 games that they played at home, they did win 3 and drew 1. So again, like, we're under no illusions here, Raf. They're the home team. That's an advantage to them. It'll be a tough game. We're pointing out very obvious things here. But the main thing that I would be looking for is just that the fact that Jurasek gets well looked after on that left-hand side. Now, the fact that Seamus is playing right wing-back, I wouldn't hold any concerns about that. Seamus, wonderful player, as we know, and the experience that he will bring. But I definitely think he'll be the one to be watching, and also Schick in that kind of centre-forward position.
Yeah, and speaking about hostile atmospheres, obviously if we were to win that, we'll have the winner-takes-all game at the Viva Stadium on the 31st of March. And Hamer had his wish granted that the away fans at Viva Stadium in that match will be moved from the north stand behind the goal and into a corner. Ireland fans would be behind both goals, and what Hamer said was, luckily for us, both Denmark and Macedonia only requested 600 tickets, so they would be in the corner and our fans would be behind the goal. At this game, we can move them from behind the goal and have our fans behind the goal. We should look at every possible advantage to favour us in these moments, and if it comes to a penalty shootout, for example, in our home stadium, and it looks like an away game, that would be shocking. Now, obviously that would be jumping the gun a bit. Prague obviously that needs to be dealt with first before we even think of it. But in terms of the future going forward, that thing of away fans being behind that north stand, do you think actually it is something that should be looked at in terms of that they should be moved into a corner instead?
Yeah, I think it's a really wise thing for the FAI to do, and also the fact that Heimer, what I love about that is the fact that he's speaking, there's a bit of foresight in already kind of preempting if we were to get to a penalty shootout, that we'd have our own fans either side of the goal. And I also think going forward, now we spoke there about the fact that it kind of played into their favour because there was only 600 away fans, but going forward I definitely think it's something that we should look for, because the key thing that he mentioned in that line as well, we have to gain every advantage that we can, Raf, and if that means having our supporters at both ends of the stadium behind the goals, absolutely, why would we not avail of that going forward with, as I said, because it's a bigger stadium, and if that means there's a capacity for 3,000 or 4,000 away fans, it might be something different as to where we can allocate them. But for this one, absolutely no qualms about that. And what I love about it again is there's a bit of foresight, a bit of forward thinking, if you like, which is something that we haven't been great on over the years. We kind of accept these things, and then afterwards we speak about it and say, oh, why didn't we do this or why didn't we do that? I love the fact that he's kind of already kind of preempting that situation, and just trying to gain any advantage that we can get.
Yeah, whatever helps, and hopefully this time next week we're actually talking about or previewing a game which is a final rather than a friendly. But let's talk League of Ireland now, and before that, just a reminder again, RT2 and the RT Player on Thursday, and then also live radio commentary on a specially extended game on, Inside Sport.
There you go, Raf, there you go.
Living
it'll never die.
No, it'll never die. Yeah, it was just on the tip of my tongue there. So yeah, that's anyway, moving on very swiftly to Bows against Dundalk. So 1-1 draw, and the story of this game really, two good crosses from the left hand side for both of those goals.
Yeah, they both came from similar positions, if you like. The one from the cross from Stroud's absolutely brilliant cross. Dundalk just fell asleep slightly just for the short free kick. Dawson Devoy plays the Stroud's, then he's in a 1v1 situation, gets a brilliant ball, and Hickey, that man again, brilliant at attacking headers in both ends of the pitch. Really defensively he's very good, obviously, and the position he finds himself in now at centre half, but also in the box going forward. The goal last week against Galway as well, he scored from a set piece, a corner, and this time it was from open play, as you say, the cross into the box from Stroud's, attacks it really well, and a great header. I have to be honest with you, Raf, I think the second goal, which is obviously Dundalk's equaliser, I think it's a foul on the goalkeeper.
Really?
Yeah, I do. I thought it was and normally they're an overprotected species. I'm normally kind of not one who's really kind of sticking up for the goalkeepers in that situation, because they have the advantage that they can come out obviously with their hands ahead of the attackers, and sometimes it's too easy for a ref to give a foul in that situation. But I actually think it was a foul on Turecka. But to be fair to Dundalk, that's not taken away from how well they played on the night. They were absolutely brilliant. Even Anna Ellens acknowledged that afterwards in the interview, and he said they were good value for their point. Kieran Kilduff actually went one further and felt that they could have got 3 points. So I think they deserve enormous credit. But I do think the goal, to be fair, they were a bit fortunate. But sometimes you make your own luck in the game as well, Raf. And as I said, their performance probably deserved that wee bit of rub of the green. And they've been brilliant since they've come in. They're sitting in 5th position, 11 points. Love the way Kilduff speaks, comes across really, really well. There's kind of an assurance about him that I really, really like. He's not fazed by the fact that they're going to these big clubs in terms of Bohemians being the league leaders, whether it's up to Tallaght, the Shamrock Rovers, they've gone to the Brandywell, they've picked up points in all those games, and you only have to look at the last 3 that they've played. Obviously they beat Waterford 5-0, beat Sligo last week 1-0, and to pick up the point against Bohemians. And he spoke also about the amount of injuries that he had and players missing, Vinnie Leonard, Cornwall, Danny Mullen. So I think he'll be over the moon with the start that they've made, and to be on 11 points after 8 games, I think is a great return.
And for Bows, still top of the table, not one of their great performances this season. So how do you feel Alan Reynolds will actually look at that? Because they did still get something out of it, even though I think, as Kieran Clough was saying, he felt they were full value for more than a point. And the second half particularly, Bows were under pressure. Yeah,
they were under pressure. And again, as I said, Alan acknowledged that in his interview. I think when he reflects, maybe just not on that individual game, he'll be disappointed the fact that they probably didn't play to the standard that we've seen in the opening 7 games, if you like. But I think on reflection, now that there's a bit of a break, the dust has settled, he'll be over the moon to be 8 games in. They've won 5, drawn 3. They haven't lost a game yet. I was at the game in Tolka on Monday night. They were the better team against Shelbourne as well. He'd be disappointed that they probably didn't push on and get the 3 points there, but he probably would have taken the point. And then again, another point on Friday night against Dundalk. 2 draws in a week. Wouldn't be overly kind of excited about that. But over the course of 8 games to be sitting top on 18 points. He'll be absolutely delighted with the start that they've made. As I said, there's a little bit of a break now. There can be a little bit of a reset, and it's a big month coming up now, obviously April and May, with the games that they'll have. And there's a target on their back now as well, Raf. They've made that start that people are kind of gunning for them, and that's a good position to be in for Bohemians. The question now that everybody is going to ask after the first round of games, if you like, can they maintain it, and can they be there after the second round of games? And then all of a sudden you might be talking about a title challenge.
Yeah, and Pats are right behind them, 2-0 winners at Waterford. Luke Turner with a couple of goals, albeit I think maybe the first one. I don't know. Would you claim it if it was yourself?
No, you couldn't be claiming that.
No.
It was the weirdest OG I think I've ever seen. Just even in the trajectory of how the ball went so far up in the air and looped up in over the goalkeeper, and he was almost kind of scrambling into the corner and ended up kind of bundled into the net, if you like, the goalkeeper. But Stephen Kenny, unbelievable. They won 5 of their last 6 and they drew the other game. So they're absolutely flying in those 5 games as well. Very free scoring. They've scored 14 goals. So to go to Waterford, I know Waterford are having a tough time of it at the moment, but you still need to go and do your business and to score the goals that they have and get themselves the victory. As 5 wins out of the last 6. It's funny there, even Raf, like we're speaking about 8 games in and a bit of a kind of reflection time. But when you think back to 8 weeks ago, the doom and gloom after Bohemians and Pats, that it was a bit of a drab affair, not great on both ends, no shots, no goals, and here we have Bows after 8 games sitting top, and now Pats obviously breathing down their neck as well, having banged in 14 goals in the last 6 games. So Stephen Kenny will be over the moon with that as well. It looks like he has a settled team there. Nugent has obviously come into the midfield, added energy and legs alongside Lennon. There was a lot of that kind of almost kind of resting on Lennon's shoulders. If you look back to last season, could you maybe had Forrester behind him, so Lennon was almost doing a lot of the donkey work by himself. The fact that he's had help now with Barry Bagley has come in there, Nugent, Lennon as well. I know he's missed a couple of games, but he's not carrying the can for all that workload, if you like. And then the attacking players that they have are very, very exciting. Levy's added goals to his game this season. Keane has come in, chipped in with a few. Max Matt has obviously made impact. So I think it sets it up lovely now for obviously the second kind of round of games for St. Pat's, and to find themselves in a really, really strong position. Yeah,
and Nugent obviously bringing a bit of physicality in there as well into that central area.
Yeah, and that was something that was missing for them. Like the one thing we used to speak about over the course of the season last year was that it was almost, they were too easy to play against St. Pat's, and that there was a kind of a soft underbelly. To be fair to them, they've only conceded 5 goals, so defensively they're sound as well in 8 games, and the fact that they've scored plenty as well, 14 is it that they've scored. So I think things are going very, very well for them. And Stephen Kenny will be over the moon with that. He'll be absolutely delighted.
Yeah, and Waterford, of course, still bottom of the table at this point of the season. No wins as of yet. Obviously, Kevin Long was signed last week, but he's not ready to come in. So they just need something to snap their season into life at this stage.
Yeah, it must be a worry at this stage, to be honest with you, Raf. The fact that the last 5 they've lost all 5 now, and they've conceded 16 goals in those games, 19 in total as well. So John Daly will have to be worried. I think the next one coming is Shamrock Rovers at home as well, so it doesn't get any easier for them. But he will have to do a lot of soul searching over this kind of break, like we're speaking about Bohemians having a bit of a reset and being in a strong position over the break, and Stephen Kenny something similar. John Daly is the complete opposite end of that kind of spectrum, and the fact that he'll be scratching his head and I'm sure working tirelessly over these kind of next 10 days before the next game just to see where he can stop the rod, if you like. John Mann did suffer a serious injury, so he's missing. So you mentioned Long has come in, a reinforcement that will help them, but defensively that's the biggest issues for them. Like conceded 19 goals already. I think if you look back to last season, I know that they stayed up, but they conceded over 60 goals last season as well. So major problems defensively, and that's the one thing you need to sort out before you worry about the top end of the pitch. So unless they get that sorted out very, very quickly, not only will they be in big trouble, but I think John Daly will be in big trouble as well, because that can't carry on for much longer.
Yeah, Shamrock Rovers 2-0 winners over Galway United. So Danny Grant with the first goal 5 minutes before half time, and then Aaron Green, the evergreen Aaron Green, late on as well, and the assists coming from Corey O'Sullivan for the first one. Really good low cross from the left hand side, and then John O'Sullivan with a great ball from deep to release Green. But just interested in terms of Victor Ojenvuna and his sort of role. Like this time last year, I think I remember Richie Towell saying that he would love to see him playing a little bit more in the team. Obviously he's still a very, very young lad, but this season he's played a part in all 8 games, starting 5 of them. He's very versatile at this stage. He's obviously going to Arsenal eventually. So where do you see him eventually finding a home in terms of a tactical place, particularly when he goes to Arsenal?
Yeah, I think, to be fair to him, he deserves a lot of credit, and Stephen as well, because you've mentioned he's participated in 5 out of the 8 games, so that's a lot.
Well, started 5 and then played in all 8.
Yeah, so that's a lot, really, Raf. When you think of the midfield quality they have, like, so he's battling against the best in the country just to kind of get a starting role or just to get minutes on the pitch. So the fact that he has started 5 out of the 8 and played the came on in the other games, I think is a real credit to himself. But the belief that the manager has in him as well, Stephen Bradley, to play him, because you're talking about Graham Burke, Jack Byrne, Matt Healy, Dylan Watts, like the best in the country. So the fact that he's kind of made an impact in there, I think he deserves a lot of credit. And he's only going to get better with the confidence that that's given him to be around those players, not only on the training pitch, but also in match situations as well. And he hasn't looked out of place. We all know the talent that he has. He's only going to get better, both physically and mentally as well. And I think playing in a team like that where they do dominate possession, I think he will eventually become, maybe, I know they play with a box midfield, so it's not like you could say he'd be in kind of like a number 8 situation where he'll be either the right side of a midfield sitting player or the left side of a sitting player. They play with 2 attacking midfielders, if you like, and I can see him in one of those positions. Now Jack looks like he's back to his best as well, and he played the other night, and Victor also. So I think it bodes well for him going forward. And Stephen, it's one thing to note this year that we probably didn't see in the last 2 or 3 years with him, but he has tended to play some of the younger ones and give them an opportunity. You mentioned John O'Sullivan coming on as well, and a brilliant pass. So it just goes to show the quality that they have. And it's great to see these young players emerge and come through as well, because whatever about it being a young league around and a development league, I think is what it's come for, and lots of opportunities for young kids around different parts of the country with depending on resource at clubs. It's very hard for a young player to break through there, and you have to be really kind of exceptional talent to get games. I suppose in Tala, when you look at a team that's challenging at the top end of the league and also in the cup competitions and Europe, we've also seen Corey O'Sullivan emerge, and he's a mainstay now in that team. Absolutely excellent talent.
Picked in the under-21 squad, I think.
Brilliant player, yeah. And again, you spoke about the assist for the goal. That's him getting forward into, I suppose, what he used to be kind of like a left back, left wing back, getting balls into the box. I've seen him play now mainly as a left-sided centre half in a 3 with the way Shamrock Rovers play. Excellent on the ball, very good defensively as well. He's one of these that kind of... He's steady 7, 8 out of 10 every week, which is a major compliment to a player. He just goes about his business, nothing too kind of no frills, not loads of eye catching stuff, but he's very dependable, very reliable. So yeah, it bodes well for Shamrock Rovers. Like Stephen speaks a lot about the fact that we're only going to get better. That's what we hear a lot in the interviews over the opening games of the season. And if you look at, I suppose, the last 5 games, there is that inconsistency where they've drawn one out of the last 5, but that was kind of a comfortable victory the other night against Galway, and it just looks like they're kind of just getting into top gear.
For Galway, obviously this was a free hit going up to Tala, so I suppose their main focus would have been on what happened a few days earlier against Waterford. Yeah,
it's huge, and you're right to point that out, Raf, because the games against Shamrock Rovers are not going to kind of define their season. I listened to the interview with Richie Holland after the match, and he spoke about the fact that they've gone now to Dalymount, they've gone to Talca, they've gone to Tala in the last 2 or 3 weeks. They've been competitive in all the games, but not really come away with much out of those, if you like. But the key one was that sandwiched in between those games was that Waterford one, and I know it was kind of a thrilling roller coaster game, but they got the victory. They came out the right end of the result and won 4-3, so that's huge. They are games that will define their season. I think, to be fair, I know they're sitting in 8th position, they've only 8 points, but I've been impressed with the games I've seen Galway. I think they'll be fine, I have to be honest, Giraffe. I think he's recruited well, John Caulfield, and going forward, as I said, they've had a tough run of fixtures. When they come back after the little mini break, I think the fixtures kind of are a little more winnable than, if you like, of going to Dalymount or Tala or Talca Park. So I think they'll be fine, Galway.
Yeah, and then Derry City 2-2 with Drogheda United, and something we were pointing out in recent weeks was Derry had this habit of conceding first and giving themselves too much work to do. Sometimes they would get out of jail, but sometimes it would come a little bit too late. This time it was the opposite. They do build up a 2-0 lead and yet couldn't hold it.
Yeah, worrying times, I have to be honest with you, Raf, just for the fact, and it's a different conversation, you're right, in terms of the first 4 games, and they were all home games and conceding first, and that brings its own discussion as to why that's happening, and you're trying to eradicate that. Then you go into a situation where the last 4 games they've only picked up 2 points out of 12, and And the fact that they were 2-0 up against Drogheda at home and not to get the job done, and even listening to Tiernan Lynch, he felt the game was done and dusted, and without sounding disrespectful to Drogheda, but he did feel the game was done and dusted, that they were in a comfortable position. But then just lapses in concentration, the 2 goals that they concede, it looked like James McLean was playing kind of left-sided centre half the other night again, so there's no real kind of continuity, if you like, and there was a mistake between him and Fleming for the goal, also no communication. Now a wonder strike from Mark Doyle, absolutely cracking goal, but then there was another mistake afterwards for Warren Davis to score 2 goals in quick succession. So it's just points to the fragility, if you like, of that Derry team at the moment. That once when one went in, there was probably murmurs around the stadium, here we go again, few moans and groans, and then they concede quickly after that as well. The goalkeeping situation is not helping with Brian Maher being out as well, and you look at, I suppose, the one thing I always look at for teams that are successful, not just in our league, in any league, you always look for continuity in the team selection, that if you know your best 11, but that if you have 9 or 10 out of that 11 playing every week, obviously you can have the odd injury, the odd suspension, but if you've the guts of 9 or 10 playing every week, I think that always bodes well for a team going forward, particularly the successful teams. You look at Derry again, looked like they went back to a back 3 the other night, a different 3 as well. There was no Slevin, no McLean. It was it looked like, as I said, James was playing left side centre half, so Bannon was playing as well. So I don't know, all is not right there. And again, you only have to listen to, I suppose, the fans speak as well. And it must be concerning for Tiernan Lynch, because I'm not sure he knows his best 11. Yeah, and Brian Maher, as you mentioned, has been out, obviously with a wrist injury for those last few weeks. And Eddie Beach was in goal. Now, he's obviously not at fault for either draws or goals, because they were, the Mark Doyle strike was brilliant. Warren Davis's goal also really, really well taken. But is it a bit like with Arsenal in the Carabao Cup final, where obviously Ariza Balaga makes that very glaring error for the very first goal, but actually maybe the bigger issue that Arsenal had against City yesterday was more the distribution side of things. He can't pick the same passes as Raya, so Maher, who is very good with the ball at his feet as well, that takes a little bit of rhythm away from Derry, I suppose, in the build-up. Yeah, because Brian, as you say, is one of the best in the country at that, but I would be pointing just pure, if you want your goalkeeper in no matter who it is at the moment, I wouldn't be worried about the distribution side of things if I was Derry after conceding 11 goals, Raf, to be honest with you. And the fact that he's chopping and changing so much, whether it be the back line, the midfield area as well. Only for Mickey Duffy again, like he scored a great goal again the other night, and they've been so reliant on him. Josh Thomas didn't play the other night, and we spoke highly of Josh at the start of the season about potentially being a top goal scorer, but he played James Clark as a false 9 the other night. Markey did score, obviously, but he's been missing with injuries as well. Riley came back into the midfield the other night. Now, I think Adam Riley should be playing the midfield anyway. There was no Winchester, so he's chopping and changing with the team a lot. And as I said, the fact that they're sitting 6th, 9 points, when you think of the expectation that was around them, even off the back of the President's Cup, which I thought they played very, very well. I was at that game in Tala, and I was thinking this is going to be a year where we'll really push Shamrock Rovers and mount a serious title challenge. It looks like it's all petering away before it's even started, Raf, because you look at the 4 Dublin teams that are on top at the moment, they're stretching away from everybody else. That's my fear right now at this moment in time, is they are so dominant that they're already breaking away from the other clubs, which I don't think is a good thing for the league, especially the regional teams. We need as much of them doing well. Dundalk are the ones that at the moment the closest in contention that are doing very well, but already I can see a big divide in the top 4 compared to the rest, and as I said, I don't think that's a good thing for the league. I was even looking at a stat last night, I think we'll give Chippy a bit of credit on Twitter for this one, but out of the games they've played, I think 20 games they've played, the Dublin teams, the top Dublin 4 teams against the rest of the league, I don't think they've lost any of them. So that's a glaring kind of stat, if you like, in terms of the quality of what they have compares to the rest. And as I said, I don't think that's a good thing for the league. It's great for those Dublin teams, and good luck to them, and there's a lot of quality in those teams. And even in terms of a title race, if there's 4 teams in that title race, it'll be absolutely brilliant for us, Raf, and I'd love to see it. Even if there's 3 teams in the title race, it'll be brilliant. But certainly in terms of the bigger picture of the league, if you have those 4 and the resources that they have and getting into European money and the financial side of things, breaking away from the rest, I don't think that's a good thing for the league. Yeah, and then Drogheda United, there was a bit of an update this morning in terms of their off the pitch situation. So Drogheda United owners, the Travella Group, have said that Joanna Byrne has been removed from her role with the club as co-chairperson. Last month, Byrne claimed the club's board of directors said her position was untenable following her statement around the Republic of Ireland v Israel fixture in the UEFA Nations League.
Byrne, a sitting Sinn Féin TD for Louth, had said she will not be stepping down from her voluntary position with the Boyne-siders and wanted to continue in the role. However, Travella Group issued a statement to say Byrne has been removed from her role, and you can read the statement on rte.ie/sport. And just in addition, the American-based owners of the club previously said they were parting ways with Byrne due to a breakdown in the trust and confidence and not on political views or beliefs. And Joanna Byrne last week, as this was rumbling on, did issue a response where she said, today's developments are deeply upsetting but not surprising. On a personal level, I'm heartbroken. I've always put Drogheda United first, and over the past month have continued to try and uphold the same. I will now take some time to review my options and won't be making any further comment at this time. As I said, her statement, that was from last week. You mentioned Shelbourne in terms of the Dublin clubs that are doing well, or at least, you know, they seem to be building a bit of momentum. They went to Sligo Rovers and won 1-0, but Daniel Kelly, obviously the previous week, had snaffled a goal against Airtricity that was probably one of the simpler goals he'll score. This one against Sligo, very, very different.
Yeah, very, very different. And to be fair to Daniel, he's played well in the last 2 or 3 weeks, and I've seen a couple of the Shelbourne games, and he's had a huge impact on that kind of right wing back position, or whether it be left wing back. But the one the other night obviously cuts in from the right, and a brilliant strike with his left foot. Just looking at it, it seemed to be not in the bottom corner, and I just wonder with Sam Sargent, was he unsighted? Because he seemed to see it a bit late, and as I said, it didn't go past him. It looked to me right in the corner, but a brilliant goal from Daniel. And tough game again, go down to Sligo Rovers, pitches and great down there. They're obviously battling for points themselves. So for Shelbourne to come away with the 3 points, and I spoke to my neighbour, the goalkeeper, Big Vesher Spiel, yesterday, and he said it was a tough game but a good win for him. He was delighted with it. He pulled off a good save himself near the end, and it's a big win from Shelbourne, because I mentioned the fact the Bohemians, St. Pat, Shamrock Rovers all getting off to really good starts. It's important, and they were my tip at the start of the season, Shelbourne, and have a couple of injuries at the moment, but it's important that even at this early stage, that they just hang on the coattails of those teams and just stay in that mix, Raf, because even looking at Derry, and I've already mentioned, it feels as though they're kind of out of contention already at this early stage, and you're not going to win a league at this early stage, but you can certainly lose a league, and I think it's so important, even after the results of Friday night, that Shelbourne went down there, got themselves to 3 points, and as I said, are hanging on the coattails of the top 3 at the moment.
Yeah, and in terms of Sligo Rovers, I suppose finally Archie Meekson did force a good save from Spiel towards the end, but again they did put a little bit of pressure on, but the lack of goals is very glaring. Even looking at the stat, in their 8 games so far, in 6 of them they haven't scored a goal, and that's obviously an issue. I think we know where that kind of stems from in terms of players that they've lost. You can just look at who's in the Hibs squad at the moment. That's a big miss for them, obviously, and then the replacements, Mai Traore so far hasn't really hit the ground running.
No, it would be a major concern, Raf. It's funny, I've that stat written down, and that's a glaring one for me. Like, that would be of such concern to John Russell. He already knows the fact that they've only scored 3 goals in those 8 games, but more worrying, they've only scored in 2 out of the 8 games, and that was the opening night of the season that Kiki scored up in Derry, actually a great goal. He's been missing, of course, which is a big loss, and then was the 2-1 victory against Drogheda. They got the 2 goals that night, but to not score in the other 6, it just points to the problems that they have, because 12 goals conceded, but they haven't been kind of beaten out of sight really in a lot of the games. They've been in the games, if you like, and competitive, and losing by the odd goal, but the fact that they've only scored 3 in 8 games, it just gives you no chance whatsoever to try and pick up any points, and that's a major problem. Cian Kavanagh, he's not going to get you goals, and we've mentioned this many times, and obviously Traore was the one that they brought in the off-season, and he has had no impact whatsoever as well, so it's difficult for them at the moment. And I know Elding was late in the day when he did go, and that obviously was a major setback, and he carried the can for a lot of that last year. But I also think he should have still maybe looked to reinforce him and maybe get in another centre forward, even if Elding was going to stay. And John Russell might feel as though the rug was pulled from underneath him only a week out, but all the likelihood was that he was going to go at some point, and I would have maybe looked to even get another forward in. And I'm sure maybe John was trying to get an extra one in, we don't know, but I'm sure he was. But yeah, that is a major problem for them, and as I said, the only thing that's saving them at the moment is Waterford is so poor, but you can't be relying on other teams to be poorer than what you are, so that would be like they've lost 3 on the bounce now as well. So big problems for Sligo Rovers. They're all aware of this, but that's the most glaring one for anyone that's looking at statistics. To not score in 6 out of the 8 games is a major concern.
Yeah, now in the Women's Premier Division, there was a lot of news from last week involving Athlone Town. So yesterday I spoke to Shelbourne's Rachel Graham to review the weekend's action, also the bits of news as well, and then also a new mandate that FIFA brought in regards to female coaches. And of course, for Rachel Graham, yesterday was a recovery day because she was in action on Saturday evening.
Yeah, we got home pretty late, and like when you have a bad result as well, your sleep is never as good as it normally is. So look, it's just about kind of recovering today. I obviously didn't really play, so I'll just go out for a bit of a walk, do a bit of a stretch, and then like when we come into training tomorrow, now whoever didn't play will have a harder session. So we'll get the kind of runs into our legs tomorrow. But no, today is just trying to switch off from yesterday, to be honest. Try and forget about your results as much as you can, and see our family, see our friends, because during the week it's so busy, and obviously our Saturdays are gone. So look, it's a bit of a rest, recovery, but as much as you can mentally switch off and then prepare yourself then from tomorrow onwards.
Yeah, so that was your result against Wexford, which we'll talk about very shortly. But obviously the big news that I was referring to was Athlone Town looking for a new manager because John Sullivan has resigned, and this is just one game into the league season. So the statement they put out on Thursday was Athlone Town AFC can confirm that John Sullivan has tendered his resignation as our women's first team manager. We would like to thank John for his efforts with the club, both with our men's and women's teams. Our focus remains solely on preparing the team for their upcoming league fixture against DLR Waves this coming Saturday. The club will be making no further comment at this time. So technically it's 2 games, of course. It's the President's Cup, which was 1, and then of course the league game against Sligo Rovers last week, which was a 1-1 draw, which we discussed here. And your reaction when you first heard it, because of course the Shells Athlone rivalry is it's the big one in terms of trophies in recent years. So I imagine it would have caught your attention more than most people. And where were you when you found out?
No, I was out and about, and I wasn't looking at my phone. And then when I got home, I looked at it, and like it was in about 4, messages with people talking about it. It was in the WhatsApp group. So I'm sure not just ourselves. It's obviously, the league is getting more coverage now, so it is getting more attention. But yeah, no, it was a big shock, to be honest. I really didn't see it coming. Obviously only 1 game in. So you can't imagine it's based on anything to do with like results or performances or anything like that. So yeah, it was a real shock. And look, the statement from the club didn't give too much away either, so it's hard to know. And look, John put his own post on social media and just mentioned that it was to do with like his values not aligning with the club's values. So again, pretty vague. He obviously probably doesn't want to say what really happened, which look is fair enough. You have to kind of protect what's left behind as well, so you respect that. But yeah, no, it's obviously not ideal timing now for Athlone, 1 game into the season, and they've obviously been through it before with Colin Fortune. And look, it's not great timing. Obviously, the new manager, when they do come in, usually it's like an off season and they have a full pre-season to get to know players, get to know the team, implement what they want to do. But it's not a decision now that like I don't think they can take their time with it at Athlone. Obviously, they've Bows this weekend. It's going to be a really tough game. So do you just get someone in as quick as you can, or do you take your time? It's a hard one to manage. So look, not ideal timing for them, but they've been through it before. They dealt with it really well. So it'll be interesting now to see who does go in. I have heard just kind of through the rumour mill that maybe Alvin Hyson or Steph Roach might be the 2 front runners, but I think we'll probably see a decision quick enough, because I don't think really Athlone have too much time to waste on this one.
Yeah, as you said, there has been quite a lot of change over the time period, the last sort of 5-6 years. Tommy Hewitt, Kieran Kilduff, Colin Fortune, John Sullivan, all to varying degrees, relatively short reigns. I think Kilduff's probably a little bit longer, and then obviously Tommy Hewitt before that as well. But as you said, we've actually been in a very similar situation only a few months ago, last September, when Colin Fortune sort of left very abruptly when they were in a great position, and John Sullivan came in and he carried on that job. They won the double, and he seemed really positive about this season to come. So obviously the players are made of tough stuff, and it doesn't seem like they're overly affected by whatever changes there are at the top.
Yeah, and look, they proved that last year, obviously, and then they went and beat DLR this weekend as well. And don't know who took charge, but look, they obviously, really strong mentally as a team. They've obviously, been really successful, which doesn't come easy either. So like, it probably takes a lot to phase them. You just think, like, obviously you need a manager, and as the games go on now, I think each team's getting tougher, and managers are coming in. They're probably better tactically aware. Teams are set up now, so It's not a case where they can just, win games or go by on their talent or their mentality. They're going to need someone to really steer their ship and, put them into shape or, say what's going wrong at half time. So you might get away with it for a few weeks, but I think ultimately they'll need someone who's, a strong character, good tactical awareness to go in there. And look, they're going for 3 in a row, which is not easy. So to do it without a manager, I don't think is doable. So I think the sooner the better they get someone in.
Yeah, as you mentioned, Steph Zamber is one of the names that's been linked out there at the moment, but obviously no confirmation one way or another and who's taken the vacancy. But if she were to get it, she had that stint at Shamrock Rovers towards the second part of last season. It'd be a huge opportunity for her. She was the one to take this on.
Yeah, and look, Steph's done well with them as well, to be fair to her. That was obviously her first taste of management. She's been involved in coaching. She's with one of our underage international teams. She was part of the coaching staff at Rovers and then got her first taste of managerial. And look, I think she was probably disappointed not to actually get the Rovers job in the end. As far as I heard, it was nearly kind of not promised to her, but I think she was getting the feeling that she was going to get it for this year. And obviously, James O'Callaghan then came in. So I think she was disappointed with that one. She probably, got a taste, got a bug for it. So look, I think it's great to see, our ex-female players or Irish internationals coming back into the league. So I think they'll definitely consider her. It's just whether it's right for Steph or not, or whether it's right for the club or not. So yeah, no, she'll definitely be a name, and it's good to see the likes of her getting thrown around now and the talks of managers coming into clubs.
Yeah, and we'll come back to sort of the issue of female coaches because that's obviously on a more global scale. Obviously, the news in regard to FIFA and mandating the number of coaches on for national teams at major tournaments, whether it's underage or senior. But on the pitch, at least, Athlone, they didn't win last week, but even though they'd lost their manager only a couple of days before, they got the job done against DLR Waves, 1-0 win, and I suppose the goal scorer probably no surprise to people.
Yeah, and yeah, look, I think for them going into that weekend, it was just get the win. Obviously, with everything that goes off the pitch, it's a big distraction, and it's just win the game. However we managed to do it, and look, Dana Sheriff, I think she's credited with the goal, but I think if you see it back, I think it's probably really an own goal by Summer Lawless. A big kind of long loopy cross in, goes over Summer's head, hits the post, and when she turns to collect it, then it hits her and goes in. But I do think you might say, oh, it's a lucky jammy goal, but I do think you create your luck, and when you're trying really hard or you're playing well, these things start to go your way. And like that, when you're not playing well or effort's not there, you don't get that bit of luck. So in fairness, like, it's not the best goal they're ever going to score, but it doesn't matter. It's 3 points at the end of the day. It's a clean sheet, and they just got their important first win of the season. So look, she's definitely going to be a big threat, I think, Dana Sheriff this year. I think she's the perfect replacement for Kelly Brady, and you'd imagine she'd be up there for the goal boot, I'd say, in the end of the season.
Yeah, and she started the season very well, of course. And then, as we alluded to at the start, of course, your own Shelbourne team were playing away, and this was at Wexford, 1-1 draw. Olivia D'Amico with the opening goal for yourselves just before the half-hour mark, and then Ciara Rossiter equalising for Wexford about 5 minutes later. And just looking at the first half chances, you were really on top at that stage. A lot of chances even before Olivia D'Amico opened scoring.
Yeah, I think we had a chance within the first minute. We probably should have scored as well. And look, I think for us coming away, it's a very disappointing night for us. Like, we do feel like we've left 2 points behind there, just given the amount of chances that we had, and not even half chances. Like, we really good, clear-cut chances that we haven't scored, and that's what's really frustrating about it. And I felt like it was going to come. Like, we're getting so many chances, I'm like, surely we'll get the second goal here. And I do feel if we got the second one, we would have won the game, but I think it was one of them nights we had been there all night. It just wasn't going in the back of the net for us. So it's kind of balancing act then of, do we throw everything forward in the last couple of minutes? And look, we've done that before in games, and we've ended up conceding and you lose the game. So I think given how early it is in the season, you can't, throw everything at, trying to get your win when it's really not going your way, and just make sure you do come out there with a point. But look, it's definitely for us, it's a really frustrating one. Like we probably, like, if you're being real about it, we probably could have scored 8 goals if we had shooting boots on. But look, really frustrating. But like I said, it's too early in the season to be getting really bogged down in these sort of stuff, and another game now the weekend to just kind of put it right.
Yeah, and there was a decision, and I know I saw Pearl Slattery sort of remonstrating with the referee just as the halftime whistle was blown. So there was the chance where it was blocked on the line. Obviously, we don't have all the replays available in terms of angles, but from your vantage point, did it look like it was a handball on line by the Wexford player where it was 1-1 at that stage?
Yeah, and look, yeah, I do. I think it was obviously at the time I thought it was a handball, but look, you're obviously gonna always think in favour of yourself. But I do think I watched the back. Look, I do think it hits her arm, but I don't think she kind of moves her arm to stop it. I don't think it's like a blatant or direct attempt to stop the ball. But still, it's a bit frustrating for us where it's probably going to the back of the net if it doesn't hit her arm and it doesn't go your way. But look, we said this after the game. You can blame referees all you want, and but at the end of the day, we missed so many chances. So, like, we've only ourselves to blame. I think looking at a referee's decision, or we could have got a penalty. It's just the easy way out. But maybe we should have had that game then buried probably in the first half, and if not, definitely the second half.
Yeah, because of course, without the second goal, then it opens up for Wexford, and Kira Rossiter obviously gets the goal. But when you're looking at that defensively from your own point of view, second ball from a corner, where would you be, or like where I suppose what would the analysis be focusing on now in these few days afterwards?
Yeah, and look, we've spoke about Wexford before and how dangerous they are to second balls from free kicks and corners. So that's disappointing as well. But if you're probably really being critical of it, I think for us, like Maya, she'd probably maybe catch the ball. I know she's probably just thinking safety first, get it away. But if you're really nitpicking at her, I think she could probably actually catch the ball and then we don't have to deal with a second ball. But look, sometimes it's a bit of a luck there as well, where it just falls to the feet of a Wexford player and we've no one. But look, Rossi, she catches it so well. There was no one getting in the way there, and I wasn't getting her hands up quick enough. But yeah, look, it's disappointing for us that we know they're dangerous on a second ball in and around the box, and that's how we can see it. So, another way to add to our frustration from the night.
Yeah, and apart from, and we'll come to Galway United later on. Everyone has at this point, every other team other than Galway has dropped points at some stage this season, and same with Shamrock Rovers, who I think when we were doing the season preview, there was a sense maybe they can push on this season. And it's Peamount that went there in I think what we can call the James O'Callaghan derby now, and they won 2-0 with goals either side of half time. And I suppose the build up, and even having spoken to James O'Callaghan at the League of Ireland launch, they had brought in a couple of players from Peamount where he'd had so much success. But the story of this game seems to be ex Shamrock Rovers players for Peamount hurting their former teams.
Yeah, and that's probably there's a bit of extra motivation for Peamount going into the game, given James had been there for so long and then went and took some of their players. So probably a little bit of extra motivation for them. But look, I thought Rovers in the first half where it looked like they were really in control of the game and probably looked like they were going to go on and win it comfortably, but that's never the case. And they had loads of chances, Rovers, and it's always the way. If you don't take your chances, you always come back to bite you. And I think, look, Emily Corbett probably had the best chance of the whole game, and I think it's around 25 minutes where she's put through one-on-one with Amanda, or sorry, with the keeper, and Sive Dials was brilliant to put her through. And like, she obviously just doesn't catch it right, but she hits it, really far wide of the goal. And if they go 1-0 up there, it could be a completely different game. But Peamount then score against the winner playing. It's Sophie Bourne, who, like you said, was at Rovers previously and just wasn't really getting any chance of senior football. So I'm sure she was really out to prove a point. And then she actually wins the free kick that they score from. And then it's kind of like it's a block shot, another kind of block shot. And she's forced then to get on the third ball. So, look, brilliant day for her. She obviously got player of the match as well. And, brilliant for her. She's another good young player coming through. And then perfect start to the second half. Saoirse Mealy, again, ex-Rovers, probably out to prove a point, gets the second goal. And Rovers probably disappointed with it, especially Therese. I think she's obviously expecting it to hit the post and she's going to clear it down, but it's like she gets too close to it and then she just has kind of no body part to throw at it. And looks Saoirse Mealy then on it, forced to pounce on and puts it the back of the net. So I think they were brilliant then. Peamount, thought they seen the game out like so well, so professionally for such a young team. How experienced, it was like they were a really experienced team, showed a lot of maturity. And to be fair, like, I think I was kind of nearly worried for them. I thought with the players they'd lost, are they going to really struggle this year? But I just thought some of the young players, I think especially I think Ciara O'Neill was excellent at the back for them. Their winger Aoife O'Connor as well, excellent. She set up the second goal. And that's where Peamount have probably been being clever, where they realise they're kind of losing players, so-called bigger clubs that have gone to. The two of them have come from at loan, so they're probably going to clubs where they're getting the best of the youth who just aren't getting senior football. Same with Sophie Bourne, Saoirse Mealy, and getting probably the best of our young talent coming through. And they were, I thought they really deserved to win yesterday.
Yeah, and then Bows with a first win of the season, 3-0 winners over Cork City. Kieran with a couple of goals, and Savannah Kane also afterwards as well. But where last week it was Sarah McKevitt who got a brace for Bows, this time Kieran. But the story really is set piece deliveries almost throughout this game, where Bows seem to be threatening most.
Yeah, and probably I'd say Bows maybe a bit disappointed with last week. I think they're probably seeing themselves as, they should be up there challenging or in around top three. So probably disappointing to start with an opening draw, but look back to winning ways yesterday, and a great, Kieran Maher's come back to the club, great forward, 2 goals. But yeah, look, that's where set pieces are so important in games. They can win you or lose your games. We've seen it so many times before, and yeah, they got 2-0 win up to Kieran Maher, which for dream start to her coming back to the club, and then it's just about getting your tour goal and really killing the game off. And Savannah Kane, she puts a great kind of, I think it's more of a cross she puts in, but it's in such a dangerous area that just goes straight into the net. But look, a great start for them. They had a great crowd at the game as well, which is brilliant to see. So I think they'll be definitely up there challenging. They always give us a really tough game. So I'm sure it'll be similar around this year again.
Here for Cork City, the only real chance of note was Eva Mangan hitting the post from distance, and the way they've started so far, it just seems like it's going to be just another long season, and it has been in recent seasons anyway. They've always been generally down near towards the bottom reaches.
Yeah, and probably looking like that again this year. It's going to be a tough year for them. I think that's 2 losses now for them, and it's just strange. Like Cork, it's such a big city, such a big county, and like a real footballing county for a team to really struggle so badly. And yeah, it's going to be a tough one. But I think you would think they would probably have more kind of recruitment going on in that county, or more players available. But sometimes like it's even stuff like college, and a lot of players go to Dublin for college, and it's just easier for them to play Dublin clubs. But yeah, no, it's probably not a great start for them. And yeah, you would hope that, like I was saying last year, we need games to be competitive. Same for this year. So look, hopefully they can. It's just a bit of a slow start for them. They can pick their performances up, but yeah, the early signs are not too good for Cork.
Yeah, and then Galway United in a Connacht derby, 2-1 winners over Sligo Rovers, but they really had to fight for this. And Keola Bergen obviously converts the penalties, which wiped out Sydney Stevens' early goal, 7-minute goal for Sligo. But your thoughts on the 2 penalties, because they're probably ones that are they clear cut in your view?
I think the first one, yeah, I think the keeper comes and takes her out. But the second one, I think maybe a bit harsh again. Look, it does hit her arm, but she doesn't move her arm to stop the ball. It's just run down to close the shot, and yeah, it's a bit of probably a tough one to take for Sligo. But Galway, a great start for them. They're the only team now to win their first 2 games. So, and even fairness to Cawley, like step up and score a penalty is tough. But then you sometimes see a lot of players that they don't want to take a second penalty in a game. But it didn't seem to fade. Like 2 completely different finishes from her penalty. So great from her. She's a good young player as well, coming through, probably starting to come into that real maturity in herself. And the Galway again, like always, should be up there challenging for a title, just haven't really done it in the last few years. And these are probably the games where they might have struggled previously, where they were just maybe slipping up against so-called weaker teams. But look, like I said, sometimes it's just about getting your win. And I don't think Sligo, probably caused them too much trouble after that. I think Galway just seen the game out, managed to, again, just professional in how they done it. So look, they should be up there, Galway, definitely, but I think Sligo again proved that they're not going to be any walkover this year.
Yeah, and then the final game we're talking about briefly is Treaty United, 3-0 winners over Waterford. Ciara Breslin with a brace in this game. We spoke a lot about Madison McGuane last week in terms of her potential. Obviously, a little clever pass for the opener, but Katie Lawley seemed to be the one that was like very bright. And obviously, we spoke a lot about her last season as well, but she seemed really bright in this game.
Yeah, like excellent. Katie this year compared to last year looks like she's a much different player, much fitter. She's our captain this year, so she's taken on that leadership role. And look, she was really good against us last week as well. And she's not just out of the blue. She has been, she's in and around our young underage international team. So it's not out of the blue, but I just think this year she's kind of stepped up and seems to be kind of like a more mature player, maybe even physically is, starting to develop, her kind of adult strength, would you say? So look, really excellent in the game. And yeah, like you said, Madison McGuane, like that assist she has, I mean, that's just it looks easy, but she just makes it look easy. It's actually like a really hard skill to do. But look, I think every week you'd probably pick out Madison McGuane as being Treaty's kind of star player and one for the future. So it's great. I think the two of them are probably going to lead that team. They kind of seem to be the ones who are any good players kind of has either one of them two involved. So look, again, Treaty, like I said last week, they're not going to be easy. They're a tough team, and 3-0 against Waterford, a great score line. It's really got the job done as best you can. So you'd kind of maybe worry a bit for Waterford. Are they going to struggle again this year? But Treaty definitely are getting better and better every year.
Yeah, and just to finish up, just the point I was mentioning at the beginning. So this is the news around FIFA, who will require every team participating in its women's tournaments to have a female head coach or assistant after passing groundbreaking regulations at its council meeting last Thursday. The measure comes into effect from the Under-20 Women's World Cup in September and will be enforced at the Women's World Cup in Brazil next year, as well as at the second edition of the Women's Champions Cup, which was won by Arsenal earlier this year, and also the inaugural Women's Club World Cup in 2 years' time. So that, from your point of view, is that just broadly a positive bit of news in terms of opening up opportunities now, and this is not just in Ireland, but I suppose globally?
Yeah, like it's obviously somewhere that we need. The women's game is growing and growing. It's getting more popular, and the standards are rising. So, we'd like to see that standard rise in female coaches as well. And look, sometimes females might need a bit more of a push than a male to kind of actually put themselves out there and give them the confidence that they can actually do it. So look, I do think it's a positive. Look, I think for us, as Ireland, say, like we've always had, the last number of years anyway, we've had a female coach on the team. So it's not really going to be a change for us. It's obviously maybe other nations, and look, probably most around Europe, I'd say as well, probably have a female there somewhere as well. So I do think it's good to, and any young aspiring coach can now see, females leading or coaching international teams. So look, it's a positive. And I would hope it doesn't ever go down the road of, we just don't want males in the female game. I just don't think that's a good idea as well. And even for me personally, like I've had a lot of males help me through my career, my development, have coached me, have given me great opportunities. So I wouldn't like to ever see it go, we don't want males in our game. I don't think that's fair. They've been part of getting it to where it is today. So I think it's, you can coexist in this. I don't think it's a case where we just want females and females only. But I do think sometimes females need maybe a little push to kind of actually back themselves and do it, because there's a lot of good female coaches out there, and maybe sometimes just don't have the confidence to do it. So, this could hopefully push them to it. But look, I do think it's a positive, but I don't think it's a case where we could say we don't need males in our game, because they've, my own personal experience, they've always been, really helpful to me and really developed me along the way. So you do owe a lot to the males who have gotten women's football to where it is today. So look, I think it's about getting the balance right, but I do think overall it will be a good thing.
Yeah, and I suppose a final point on that, in terms of the coach education point of view, and trying to, I suppose you kind of alluded to it there anyway, but trying to encourage more people to go through the different licensing processes to get all the badges up to, if people want to go to UEFA Pro license, it does bring a carrot at the end of it that, at least there are some guaranteed roles at the very highest level of the game.
Yeah, exactly. And look, I've kind of worked on some of the coach education courses, and some of the females that come in, they're a completely different person when they leave. It's sometimes down to confidence, and they kind of tend to tell themselves, oh, I wouldn't be good at that, or I can't do that. And when they're actually made do or put in the middle of everyone, they realize that they can do it. So sometimes, we just need to give that little bit of push. But look, great for anyone who's really kind of dedicated and really wants to excel in coaching and get all the way, now that right, there will be an opportunity for me. If I want to go to senior international, underage international, there will be an opportunity. So it is, look, a great motivation, a great carrot to really push someone. And look, you're never going to get someone who's like just wants to coach at grassroots. Like, they're never going to want to do that. So it is the ones that have the ambition, have the drive, and probably do have the talent. It's just they need that little bit of, maybe a little bit of push and backing to say, look, you can do this. And now that the opportunities are definitely there, I think, it will be a positive.
All right, well, good stuff. And I suppose final point, hope or expectation for Thursday in Prague?
Oh, definitely a win. We're definitely getting a win.
Good stuff. All right, everybody should start booking their tickets for the summer anyway. So look, Rachel, thanks a lot for your time, and best of luck also for your own match coming up the following Saturday as well.
Grand. Thanks, Raf.
That was Rachel Graham there of Shelbourne on the Women's Premier Division and some of the other news going on in the women's game. And Alan Cawley, you're still here, and we're about to leave. And I suppose
you're going to hit me with a prediction.
I will. I was actually going to more ask your gut instinct. Obviously, some people are heading to Prague metaphorically, and some people are going physically as well. So a lot of excitement building up. But yourself, your gut instinct before we go.
Yeah, I'm really excited, Raf. I have to be honest with you, as we spoke about earlier on, just in terms of it's been such a long time since we found ourselves in this position and coming off the back of the Hungary game, and I know it was a few months ago, but it almost feels like that kind of excitement has been reignited amongst the public again, and you can feel it out there. So huge opportunity for the players. Write themselves into history. Almost qualifying for a World Cup would be an unbelievable achievement, but a big job at hand, a big body of work to do over the next kind of 7 days, and hopefully it is over the next 7 days. So focus heavily on the game on Thursday night. Obviously, we have to look after business there. I know it's going to be a tough game. I think Czechia are even the favourites amongst the bookmakers. We spoke about their good home form, but I am very positive. I think we've a great chance, Raf. I really do. I think there's been a belief kind of growing amongst these players over a period of time, and the staff, and the fact that we have put ourselves in this position. I am really hopeful that we can get the job done and take it into Tuesday. Don't ask me for a prediction for next Tuesday. I want to concentrate solely on Thursday. And without giving a scoreline prediction, I'm confident we can get the job done. Here's hoping.
All right, you can give the team talk in the Fortuna Arena then as well to the players.
I'd love it, Raf.
That's G'd me up, yeah. Anyway, as I said earlier, the match is on across TV, radio and online, so you can follow it wherever. In terms of the next podcast, we might have one on Friday directly after the game on Thursday, but we'll let you know. That would be coming from Prague as well. But Alan, thanks very much for your time, and we'll catch you, I'm not going to say next week, but possibly before that.